Robert here with Flawless Magic. I'm going to take a break from the hypergeometric distribution series, and I'm going to show you another brief trick that you can do just to kind of throw something together really quick. This is a great tool to use for limited formats if you have options, and it's a good tool to use if you don't have a lot of time to throw a deck together, or you just don't like messing around with some of the stats that I've shown you before, and you might not like what I'm going to show you in the future. It's a very quick tool, not the most accurate thing, but it's a nice thing to have at your disposal. And basically, what I call it is building your deck using your ideal hand. So basically, you figure out how many cards you want in your hand, and then you use that and proportions to figure out how many you should run in your deck. So we'll say, you can do cost, and so we can do L for land, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I hate that it puts everything off to the side. I don't know, I'm just a little OCD when it comes to things like this. So if you just go, this will be your hand and this will be your deck, it's kind of an iterative process. So you say, okay, I'm okay with opening with 2 or 3 land in my hand, but I don't want more than that because I want plenty of spells that I can play. So I would say, okay, 2 or 3, we'll say 2.5. And then you can go, okay, equals this, and then you multiply by 60 and divide by 7. Boom. So we're looking at between 21 and 22 land. We'll say we're trying to go kind of aggressive, but we don't want to go too low on the land. So we'll go 22, and then, like I said, iterative process. So equals this times 7 over 60. And then you've got an actual exact decimal number for the number of cards in your hand. So you can follow the same process. So maybe in my hand I want 1 drop, I want 2 drops. One thing you definitely have to check is that everything adds up to the right numbers. So your hand shouldn't exceed 7 cards, since we're talking about turn 1, and your deck shouldn't exceed 60. So maybe we just want 1 3-drop, and you see we only have like 0.5% left over, so we'll put half of a 4-drop, and no 5 drops, because we're kind of aggressive. So then what we'll do is just exactly what I said, times 60 over 7. We can go ahead and drag this down because we have numbers for all of these, and then we kind of just round out. So let's say I want to go more on the 8 card side, so we can set this to 8. 17 seems like a lot, so maybe I would actually take that down to 16 even. Then I can take this up to 9, and I have an extra one left over, so I can make that 10, and then we just go the other way. So now this equals this times 7 over 60, and you drag it down. Apparently we have a circular reference, and that's okay. So just drag it down, and of course this means nothing to you at this point except to say you're almost guaranteed to have 1 land in your hand, so on and so forth. I mean 1 drop, 2.5 land, almost 2 2-drops. But really, looking at this, it doesn't mean a lot, but just based on an idea of what you wanted in your hand, you were able to generate this deck pretty quickly. It's very easy for aggro decks with an average to slightly low number of land. Let's say we wanted to do the same thing for a control deck, and I guess I don't know if there's a reason to keep this up, but I'll copy it over. So we're doing control deck. Okay. I still have merge cells in the middle of my screen. So a control deck probably would want to open with at least 3 land in hand. They wouldn't want 1-drops at all. They would want at least some 2-drops, but probably less than other people. So 1 or more. This control deck has a board wipe they can play on turn 4, so they guaranteed to want 1 here. Let's go ahead and extend this out to, we'll say 6, and some. 3-drops, I don't really know. Let's just go with 1 because we have plenty to go, and then we can start filling in. We'll say we kind of skip the 5-drop slot, and then we fill in the rest with 6-drops. So we just take everything times 60/7. You drag it all down. So 0 is set. And then, so we're slightly over 60. This is saying 25.7. Control, I would round up to 26. 10.2, I think that's fine. 8.5, I don't know how much 3-drops really matter. 8, 8, 2, and we'll say 5. And then we can go back and add something. We'll say, this is a removal heavy deck, so we'll add in 1 more removal spell, and then we don't have to, but if we care to, equals times 7/60, and we can drag it back down to figure out what would be in our opening hand. So very quick, certainly a lot quicker if you have a spreadsheet to help you, but it's not that difficult to do on scratch paper. You could also do it, instead of in terms of cost, you could do it in terms of creature, removal, counter, aura, and figure out how many of each of those you want in your hand. So let's say we're building a mid-range deck, and still have to consider land because it's neither of these. Mid-range deck, we're okay with 2 point, I'm gonna say 2.8, knowing that it's going to be 24 land. And creatures, we'll say we want 3 creatures in our opening hand, and we still want significant removal. It looks like 1.2 to fill that out, and so times 60/7. And there we have a rough estimate. We run 25 and 11, I think, round 1 up and 1 down, in order to get 60 cards. So you can apply this to this. You can have separate columns for creature and removal to figure out how many of each type you want at each cost. You can become as in-depth as you want with it, and it's a very quick tool that you can use if you're just designing a deck for the first time and going to tweak it. Now, one thing that I haven't mentioned yet, all of these tools that I'm showing you, they're really just for the initial phases of deck building. No level of statistical aid is going to build the perfect deck for you, but what it can do is eliminate a lot of that early stage playtesting where you're like, oh damn, I keep getting mana screwed, I keep getting mana flooded, I don't have enough actual options to play in the 2-drop slot. By taking these things into consideration in the early stages of deck building, you're more fine-tuned when you begin playtesting. But ultimately, playtesting, and a lot of playtesting, is what's going to fine-tune your deck the most, and it's going to teach you to face all the other decks, and that's what you need, is the experience firsthand. Theoretically, all you can do is get as close as possible. So that said, coming up in my next videos, whenever I get around to those, I'll show you the full version of the hypergeometric distribution and how to calculate the exact probability of cards so that you can get much more in depth with deck building from the get.